The Penguins played their fourth consecutive overtime game, a first in 7 years, and their third straight shootout game, and for once, it goes their way. I'm Matt Gajtka. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Penguins 3, Panthers 2 in the shootout, and in a game that looked like it was not going the Penguins' way, and after a shootout that looked like it wasn't going the Penguins' way, the Penguins still get the 2 points, and a critical 2 points, and I'll explain exactly why in just a moment. I want to let you know that you can join us via live chat right there on the side of the screen if you are watching this live. Going to be back with you. Once again, it's been a couple of weeks. Sorry, some life changes here. I mentioned I moved into a new house up here in Michigan. I was actually back home in Pittsburgh for something I want to talk about a little bit later in the program, actually. But here we are. I did want to talk about the Penguins and where they're at right now. Still without Crosby, without Malkin, obviously. Getting back Brian Rust for the past couple of games. And Chris Letang for the past 3, I want to say. But still a team very much compromised and still right near the bottom of the Metropolitan Division. But at the same time, you have to judge this team on a scale, I believe. And after playing 9 out of 10 games at home, it was rather important to get the 2 points tonight, or at least get a point against a team in the Florida Panthers that hadn't lost in regulation entering this week. And the Penguins do get it done, even though they did concede a point to Florida, but Florida not in their division. So really no big deal there when it comes down to it, when it comes to these 3-point games that I disdain so much in the NHL. I wish they were either all 3-point games or you figure out something to make it more consistent where you award the same number of points per game. I also don't consider shootouts incredibly legitimate, but in a lot of ways, the shootout was the story tonight, wasn't it? And it wasn't just about getting the win. It wasn't just about Tristan Jarry stopping 3 out of 4 Panthers shooters tonight, including Patrick Hornqvist, who had a chance to win the game. Did he ever take a shootout attempt in Pittsburgh? I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look that up or have someone point it out to me. But I didn't think so. Odd choice from the Panthers there, who, of course, are under new management, if you will, at least on the bench. And then Jeff Carter and Brian Rust come through on consecutive shots late in the shootout to get it done. And Tristan Jarry just happens to make that last save, taking the puck off the post. And, well, it doesn't really matter how it looks, does it? It just matters that he gets the job done after 3 rough shootouts to start the season. So the Penguins now with a record of 5-3-4, excuse me. Seems like they should have more than 5 wins at this point, doesn't it? Through 12 games, but they played 6 overtime games out of the 12. That ties them with Dallas for the league lead in that category, and it has felt like it. Even some of the games that haven't been necessarily close were a little bit closer than the final score indicated. I'm thinking about that 4-0 loss to Calgary, where they had breakaway after breakaway, seemingly, and couldn't get the job done against Jakob Markstrom. The loss to New Jersey as well, where a penalty shot decided it late. That was a 4-2 score technically, and that came right before this stretch of overtime games. Really, the only blowouts have been in their favor. You saw 7-1 over Toronto and 5-2 over Chicago. We know that 6-2 win over Tampa on opening night had 3 empty net goals. The first time that's happened in the NHL in my lifetime, and I'm 36 years old, so that tells you how common that is. And the 5-1 loss to Tampa Bay at home had multiple empty net goals for the Lightning in that case. That one, the Pens were at least around the periphery of contending for a point for a while. So not a lot of true blowouts. I suppose that's the NHL these days, but it's also the Penguins these days too, because they don't quite have the firepower to really bury a team, at least not unless everything goes their way like it did against Toronto, against a team that was slumping in the Maple Leafs about, 3 weeks ago that they played Toronto at home. But since then, these have been nip and tuck, and it comes down to just a bounce of the puck here and there, a shooter executing or a goalie executing in a certain spot. And, a little bit of luck does go a long way in these situations. So I want to talk about the shootout a little bit more, though, because you saw Tristan Jarry not look so good against Jonathan Huberdeau, kind of lunging out of his crease. I thought Alexander Barkov's attempt to go incredibly slow was strange. There were some strange decisions for the Panthers in that shootout. One, coaching. I mentioned it already. Sending Patrick Hornqvist over the boards to try to win it in the 3rd round. I get the revenge factor and all that, but the guy's just not a shootout player. He'd be like 15th or 16th off my bench if I were Florida, probably. No offense to him, but he's the type of guy who scores during the run of play and not in a skills competition type setting. And then you see Brian Rust, who I had no idea was 3 for 3 in the shootout for his career. Glad to see Todd Reirden behind the Pens bench go to someone a little bit different. You saw Jake Gensel get stopped. You saw Chris Letang get stopped. Chris just looks out of ideas in the shootout. So I'm still confused why he continues to go out there. Not that he's not talented, but I would try to mix that thing up. And then you see Jeff Carter go fourth and look as smooth as anybody out there. So shootouts haven't been a huge part of the NHL since the 2015-16 season was when 3-on-3 overtime came into play. And thankfully for me, I feel like shootouts can get redundant after a while, and they especially get redundant if you play 3 straight shootout games like the Penguins just have, but at least they get this victory. Let me know what you think about the game tonight. If there's any folks out there watching, I know Pitt is playing also opposite this, and Mike Osti will have a Pitt post game. Not to be confused with Pittsburgh post game. He'll have a Pitt post game right here on the same channel as soon as that game ends around midnight, I'm sure. Meanwhile, we get the more reasonable start time of 7 o'clock here in the NHL. I am Matt Gajtka. You might know me from my work here or my work at previous spots, covering not just hockey, but all Pittsburgh sports. And like I said, now on location in Michigan, but still following very closely and hoping to bring to you some entertainment here, whether you're watching late night on this Thursday or you're checking it out after the fact. Go ahead and click like and subscribe, as they say here on YouTube, to get your notifications when we go live, because this one was kind of improvised. I felt like I wanted to see how this game went before I talked about it, but I did want to discuss the Penguins either tonight or sometime in the near future, just because of this pivotal stretch of games they've played with only one, including Sidney Crosby, that 4-2 loss to the Devils 4 games ago. The Penguins had not had an 8-game homestand, which they just concluded earlier this week, since the 2009, 10 season. So nothing for a decade. I was actually surprised they ever had an 8-game homestand. I thought that was incredibly strange and rare. I thought it might have been, in fact, unique in the 50-plus years of this franchise, but pretty close to it. It doesn't happen a lot. And the Penguins, you wouldn't say they took advantage of it, I suppose, because they had 3 straight regulation losses to Tampa Bay, to Calgary, to New Jersey. As I mentioned, I didn't think they played terribly in any of those games. Then they beat Philadelphia at home in overtime and lost to Minnesota, blowing a 2-goal third period lead. Lost in a shootout, so they did get a point. And I always put lost in quotes when it comes to the shootout. I'll put winnings in quotes when it comes to the shootout tonight, because it's so different from the rest of the game. It's even, you can say 3-on-3 is a bastardization of hockey, and I'll agree with you, an exciting bastardization, but a bastardization nonetheless. Shootout is not even really hockey. It's just one little tiny part of the game that comes up once every 10 games or so in a penalty shot situation. But we know the drill. It's been the case for 15 years plus in the NHL, and the Penguins are in a spot where they're going to have to grind out some of these results. And I hate to say they couldn't afford to lose in a shootout tonight, because you still get 1 point. That's not bad. They still have 70 games to go after this one. Yes, 70 games left after this one. But they were technically in last place in the Metropolitan Division coming into tonight. So it's not like they're totally comfortable right now. And yes, they're going to get back Crosby, hopefully sooner rather than later. They're going to get back Malkin at some point. I don't know how great he's going to be, how good he's going to look. But the Penguins did manage to climb out of the basement, and they're now tied with the Flyers and the Blue Jackets in the Metro Division. The Islanders are alone in last place with a -2 goal differential on top of that. So there's an early surprise this season. But like I mentioned, a quality win against a Panthers team that came into this week without a regulation loss. Now they've lost 3 in a row. They lost to the Rangers, they lost to the Devils, and now they have dropped the point to the Penguins. And so they still maintain a 4-point lead atop the Atlantic Division. But their tour of the Metro here, not going so well for the Cats. But hey, we never thought they were going to be some juggernaut team. At least I didn't think so. And they still may be. They still may turn out to be terrific. They're definitely putting up the results, not just in the overtime lost columns, but also in goal differential. They're +17. That is the second best in the Eastern Conference, behind only Carolina. So, hey, they're doing it. They're going about it honestly. And I think we all thought they were going to be a good team. The question maybe was goaltending. Sergei Bobrovsky continues to push, I think, some of those naysayers off to the wayside right now. You got to love the guy's athleticism. I was just curious. I've always been curious about his technique. Sometimes he can be unorthodox, but tonight, again, he showed that he can not necessarily take a game away in the case of this one, but certainly keep his team in it for as long as humanly possible. But both teams had great chances. This was an entertaining game. That's a point I wanted to make too. I love watching these two teams go head to head. I know at the break, you heard Rodriguez at the second period break, second intermission. He was talking about wanting to maybe slow the pace down. I don't know if that actually helped the Penguins, because looking at the shot attempt numbers in the third period, it was 21 for the Panthers and just 10 for the Pens. So maybe run and gun was working for the Penguins in the first two periods, even though they had just that narrow 2-1 lead on the Evan Rodriguez partial breakaway goal. But another Alexander Barkov appreciation moment for me. He not only scores the goal, but came within about that far, a puck width from setting up the Panthers' regulation winning goal by Anthony Duclair, but it turned out to be offside upon further review. So the review saved the game for the Penguins under the rules of several years ago. There would have been no review, and the Penguins would have lost this game most likely in regulation time. And I've talked a lot about the urgency of the moment here for the Pens, getting ready to go on the road for 11 of their next 14 games, including a 5-game Western road trip. So you got to make that hay while the sun shines. And in this case, they did. And it could have very easily, though, been nothing gained from this game. And that would have been a shame, because they went toe-to-toe with one of the top teams in the league without Crosby and without Malkin. And they've done that, I feel like, a broken record at this point, because they've done that a few times. They've played Tampa really tough, too. I know Tampa's not looking like an unstoppable force at this moment, but it's still Tampa Bay, regardless of all that. And, the Maple Leafs are talented. The Penguins bombed them 7-1, despite they were being in a bad place when they visited Pittsburgh. And even the New Jersey Devils, who beat the Penguins narrowly earlier this month, or might have been late last month, come to think of it, but neither here nor there. The Devils are in the top half of the Metro Division, and they're looking pretty strong to start. So the Penguins have had to play a pretty tough schedule. And like I said, the schedule is going to flip over to being predominantly a road schedule in the near future. But there are some weaker teams coming up for the Pens to play. Ottawa, I don't care what you say about Buffalo, but I still don't believe until I see them carry something into, say, December for once. You've got Montreal coming up. They're in the tank right now. Listen, I don't think that Vancouver's any great shakes. I don't think Winnipeg's any great shakes. You got Montreal again right after the Thanksgiving holiday. And then I mentioned that Western trip where you play teams like Vancouver and Seattle who might be gettable there. So I guess as far as the NHL goes, always tough to predict game by game. Hockey's a tough game to predict game by game for sure. But it might not be as difficult of a stretch coming up, but still, when you go on the road for this long, and I don't care if you're on a roll or you're not, when you hit the road, it's going to be a challenge. And so the Penguins get what I believe to be a significant victory in a shootout, about as important of a shootout as the Penguins have played in a long, long time. Typically, when it comes to piling up points and qualifying for the playoffs and all that, it's not really a big deal. But the Pens are having to experience how the other half lives in the NHL, at least so far this season, without their two big guns, their two big Hall of Fame pending centers in the lineup. So all that's been good. Tristan Jarry, and this is the part of the broadcast where I go to bat for a player. And Tristan Jarry has been really good in the run of play, if you want to use the soccer term there, before you get to a shootout, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And even had some shaky moments tonight in the shootout. But you know what? Even though the shootouts are important, if you keep playing these shootout games, you're going to have to get some better results. Number one, Penguins fans have been spoiled because we've had arguably in Pittsburgh for 15 years, almost 15 years. You had what could be considered the best shootout goalie in National Hockey League history, and Marc-Andre Fleury. We just saw it the other night. The guy's unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do, even if you have the book on him, quote unquote. You still don't know what he's going to do, as we saw as he stopped all three Penguins who shot the other night in Chicago, or pardon me, 2 out of 2, as the third shooter didn't even have to go because the Blackhawks scored twice. But regardless, I think number one, we were spoiled here in Pittsburgh when it comes to shootouts. And number two, the vast majority of what a goalie does is during 5-on-5 and during penalty kill and power play situations, clearly. So I'm not going to get too wound up about Jarry struggling in a shootout, because he's been, to his full credit, as good as we could hope coming off of that playoff disaster last year, and really an up and down regular season. It was a shortened season, but he still had some ups and downs there, some peaks and valleys. The start, in fact, was the big trouble spot for Jarry last season, and he's come out all guns firing in this one. And really, he's had to be because Mike Sullivan and now Todd Reardon, Reardon being the coach for the past, 4 games here since Mike Sullivan went on the COVID list. But Jarry has played in 10 out of 12 games. I did not see that coming. I figured it'd be a lot closer to a 50-50 split. But Sullivan gave him the reins in 5 out of the first 6, and the last 6 have gone that way too. DeSmith started against Calgary. They lost 4-0 in that one. Nothing that DeSmith could necessarily do in that case. And then Jarry's been the guy ever since. You're going to probably see the tandem be deployed here in full this weekend because there's a couple of games back-to-back on the road at Ottawa and at Washington. In fact, I'd almost guarantee that we're going to see DeSmith probably at Ottawa to give Jarry a blow after 5 consecutive starts. So you'll look to that this weekend, and you'll see DeSmith back on the ice. But Tristan Jarry remains one of my Penguins' top performers, and he's had to be to keep the Penguins where they need to be because they're not finishing a lot of these chances. The Penguins, for the most part, have controlled play in a lot of these games more than you might expect with some of the players that are missing. And but with guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Jake Gensel not meeting their regular shooting percentages, their career shooting percentages, not even close. Even Kapanen after the hat trick, he hit a post tonight, had a couple other opportunities where he couldn't bury. So whether that's the fact they don't have big-time playmaking centers with them, I'm talking Kapanen and Gensel, or it's just something totally luck or variance related, I don't know. But the Penguins aren't putting pucks away like we're used to seeing them. So some of these games are still up for grabs that wouldn't normally be. So obviously that puts a lot of pressure on your goaltender. Walt Flanagan is here. He says, evening, Matt. Is it just me, or does Florida seem like they play always on the edge and sometimes crossing the line and don't get called for enough? That's a pretty good point. I think Florida in general is just a go for broke type of team. They push the pace a lot. That's maybe part of the reason why Alexander Barkov's advanced defensive numbers aren't very good, because they like to play off the rush. And even though he's terrific in one-on-one puck battles and taking the puck away, he's always at the top of the list in giveaways in the NHL. You know, take that stat for what it's worth. I take it with a grain of salt for sure. But some of the advanced defensive numbers don't really necessarily say that even when their best player, Barkov, a tremendous two-way player, is on the ice, the Panthers do anything above average defensively. So they rely on goaltending. And they're a pretty I don't know how to put this. They're a zealous team. They go after it hard. And I think sometimes referees can forgive that when teams are playing aggressive all the time. I'm not sure I would say they're necessarily dirty. I guess the one moment that almost boiled over tonight was when Jake Gensel ran over Sergei Bobrovsky in overtime at the top of the crease. Goaltender interference was called. The Panthers got a power play, and there was some retaliation there. I forget who it was. Was it Mackenzie Weegar was who was cross-checking Gensel a couple of times, but even he let off. So I don't know if I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing. Of course, we've now seen the Pens and the Panthers play twice this year, and we saw a ton of power plays in that first game down in Florida. That was a 5-4 overtime win for the Panthers. I want to pull that one up. In fact, I want to see how many power plays were in that game, because there were not a lot tonight. And whether it's players adjusting to the new cross-checking standard or the standard already slipping, I'm not sure what it is. But I know that game stood out to me, and the Panthers did get called for quite a bit. The Penguins had, let me check here. Well, they had plenty of power play chances in that one. Let me count up the penalties from the first meeting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 total minor penalties in that first game between these two teams. And let's see, 9 of them were called against the Panthers. So at least that night, that didn't quite hold up, where they're not getting called for a lot of things. I'm just happy to see the Panthers succeed, because we haven't seen those fans down there, regardless of how many there actually are. We haven't seen those fans have to or get to experience a winning team or even an exciting team in quite some time. But they've got a good thing going down there. And even with Joel Quenneville rightly fired or relieved from his duties, they should be all right. And I expect them to be top 3 definitely in the Atlantic Division. They've got quite a head start, that's for sure, on playoff positioning. So Marcus Pettersson was hurt again tonight. I want to bring that up too, because Juuso Riikola was just sent right back down to Wilkes-Barre Scranton, And I'm guessing he's going to come back up because Pettersson was run into by Owen Tippett. Pettersson, ironically, was the one trying to lay the hit in the neutral zone, and Tippett raised the elbow and ran him over. One of those reverse hit type of things that I've always thought was borderline illegal, if not definitely illegal. Peter Forsberg popularized that reverse hit. That's where you have the puck, but you hit the guy who's trying to hit you first. For me, that's interference because you can't hit a guy without the puck, right? And that's not really a puck battle if you're instigating it first as the attacking player. You should be concerned with making a play, not laying a hit in that situation. But apparently, according to referees and the way it's called, it is legal within reason. This one might not have been within reason, though. So I'm wondering if there might be a fine levied against Owen Tippett in that situation because he aggressively went after Marcus Pettersson with the elbow up high, hit Pettersson in the head, and Marcus did not return. So that's a shame. He just came off the COVID list, but might be another opportunity for Juuso Riikola to show his stuff. And I had a feeling that Juuso was going to get sent down because didn't have a good night against Chicago. He had a couple moments where he was beaten rather cleanly in one-on-one situations, and it led to scoring chances for Chicago that Jarry fortunately shut down. That's always been my concern with Riikola. Is he going to get burned so often? And he does get burned in some of these obvious spots, in these exposed spots on the ice. It does happen to him, but it happens to Chad Ruhwedel too, and he continues to get chance after chance with the Penguins. No offense to either guy. I'm just saying that Riikola brings even more offense to the table than Ruhwedel does, who's, I think, surprisingly adept offensively. He moves the puck really well, too. That's why the Penguins like him. And he generally plays a workmanlike, almost unnoticeable game, does Ruhwedel. Riikola takes more chances. I think he has more upside. I still want to see him get more run here, and the Penguins may be forced to give him more run if Pettersson is out for any extended stretch of time. So it's been an interesting run of games here. All the overtime games piling up. I mentioned the win over Philadelphia, the Chris Letang game winner that didn't look like a goal at all. He tucked it inside the post, and upon review, it went the Penguins' way. In this game, a review goes the Penguins' way. Late in regulation, a goal, an apparent goal for Anthony Duclair wiped off the board, and the Penguins do eventually survive overtime, and they get it done in the shootout. No one's been in overtime more than the Penguins this season. I talked about it at the top, but it bears repeating. They've been in these games that come down to just one shot, one save. And again, it happens tonight. And also I want to give props to the NHL's top penalty killing team in the Penguins for killing off the overtime power play, the 3-on-4, always difficult. Now, even though it's kind of weird because they gave up 2 goals, 5-on-6 to Minnesota. I believe they gave up 2 goals to Tampa Bay earlier this season, 5-on-6. So that's not quite penalty killing. In fact, it's not technically penalty killing. But it's also weird that they would be the team that's given up the most in extra attacker situations for their opponents, but yet they're the best team in killing off traditional penalty killing outmanned situations. So I don't know what to make of that besides the fact that it's only been 12 games and we're probably going to see that sample size even out. Do I think in the end they're the best penalty killing team in the league? No, I don't, but it's been a great improvement after they were in the bottom third last year. It has been a bugaboo for them lately. A couple of things I want to mention here before we go, as this will be just a short solo broadcast here with the Pitt football game coming to an end, and Mike Osti will be taking over the channel after that. So a dramatic shootout tonight. A lot of stuff going on across the NHL, off the ice. I don't know what else I could even add regarding the Chicago situation. Latest thing today is Chicago wants proof from the young man up in Houghton, Michigan, right here in this state where I'm coming to you from tonight, who was molested by Brad Aldrich, the former video coach of the Blackhawks, and now persona non grata in not just the hockey world, but the sports world. But the Chicago Blackhawks, apparently a lawyer sent a letter to the young man's mom asking for proof of how Aldrich's crimes affected this young man's life, who was a high school hockey player in Houghton, Michigan, which, in case you don't know, is way, way up there in the Upper Peninsula. Might as well be Thunder Bay at that point, but doesn't matter where it happened, obviously, but just giving you a sense of place. Still, the Blackhawks want proof before they pay for any therapy. So, wow, talk about a team. As I tweeted tonight, I'd say the Blackhawks should go to hell, but it seems like they're already there. And wow, talk about being a fan of that team and all the stuff that's going on there. I don't know how you hang in there right now. Of course, the Penguins went through their own situation with their former minor league coach, Clark Donatelli, former bench boss of the AHL's Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. He was let go after sexually assaulting the wife of one of his assistant coaches. Talk about awful. And it happened multiple times, apparently, too. And then the Penguins let the assistant coach go after a season. He alleged that it was partially because that he had this situation hanging over his head and that he brought it to the attention of the Penguins and that he was told to keep quiet about the Donatelli crimes. Really, he wasn't convicted, but they are crimes. It sure seems like it from the allegations. And the Penguins have settled, though, with the Scaldys. The coach's name, Jared Scaldy, his wife's name, Erin Scaldy, and they have settled. So I guess that one is out of the picture for the NHL, but that could have gotten ugly, too, here in Pittsburgh. And Bill Guerin is still under investigation. Now the Minnesota Wild GM is trying to become the Team USA general manager for the Olympics upcoming next year. And so Safe Sport, which governs all Olympic sports in these areas of ethics and morality, it is investigating Bill Guerin right now. So I guess that story isn't quite over because according to Jared Scaldy, Guerin told him to keep it quiet. And as we all know, cover-ups, when it comes to situations like this, I don't want to say the cover-up is worse than the crime, but it definitely indicates to you that the teams knew what they were doing. They knew that what they were doing was wrong, and they didn't care. They just wanted to brush it under the carpet and keep on plugging away, pursuing those wins. And, oh boy, all the stuff that blinds us. And sports teams aren't alone in this. All of the folks out there who have, I guess, brushed away certain things just because it was inconvenient to their business interests. And that's what winning is in sports. It's a business interest. I just hope we're getting to a point where more and more people think twice about just trying to minimize crimes that are committed in these situations. But like I said, I'm not sure what more I could add. Besides that, I'm glad there's some peace for the Scaldys regarding the Penguins. And I'm also glad that Kyle Beach was just as stalwart as he was in coming out with this information, really jeopardizing his quality of life, honest to God, just because he is now in the public eye, and he's going to be in the public eye for a while. Then you have the situation where Bob Murray, the GM of the Anaheim Ducks, is being investigated for apparently crude behavior and just being an all-around horrible person in charge of the Ducks for 10 or 15 years here. So I'm not sure if there's any specific incident that's going to come out from that, but it seems like NHL teams are on the alert and trying to clean some of the dirt from their carpets here and try to be on the up and up, or at least be as transparent as possible as they do so. But I want to talk about something positive off the ice. It's regarding Robert Morris University, and this comes from a negative, obviously. If you follow hockey in the area, you know that RMU, out of the clear blue this past spring, decided to cancel both of their Division I hockey programs, the women and the men, two programs that have brought the university so much great publicity and have had tremendous success despite operating on a limited budget, a very low budget compared to their peers in D1 hockey, even their peers in their conferences, which are mid-major, I guess you would call them, if you want to make a comparison to basketball or football in that way. Not a Power 5 situation for Robert Morris, and the Colonials always punched above their weight. Coach Derek Schooley on the men's side has been the coach since the orchestration of the program in 2004. Paul Colantino did a wonderful job before taking a different job after the team was disbanded this past spring. Well, you might know RMU is trying to reinstate these programs, first through the Pittsburgh College Hockey Foundation. You can find them on Twitter at PGHCHF, by the way, or you could just run a simple Google search there. And now the RMU Athletic Department has apparently seen the error of its ways, but it's going to force the team to pile up over $1 million cash in hand to get the ball rolling and get these teams back on the ice. And I had the privilege of taking part in the RMU Celebrity Face-Off this past weekend at the UPMC Lemieux Sports Center. So first of all, thanks to the Penguins for providing some support here in this situation. The Penguins have been very good after this news came down in the spring about trying to figure out creative ways to get the team back on the ice. Of course, they could bankroll the whole thing if they wanted to, but I guess neither here nor there. They are doing some good things, including some former Penguins, Colby Armstrong, Ryan Malone, Eric Tangrady, who is now a realtor in the Pittsburgh area, I found out, in addition to Steve Mears and Josh Getzoff from the broadcast team, Phil Bork from the broadcast team. They all took part in this celebrity face-off game. I was on the RMU alumni team. I was the only non-hockey player, if you will. I play hockey, but not to the level of the men and women that I played with on the RMU team this weekend. But we took on a team of Pittsburgh celebrities. Brett Kiesel was among them. He was wonderful. He even had a fake orchestrated pro wrestling style fight with one of my teammates, Andrew Blazik, a Pittsburgh native. But the sellout crowd was into it from the drop of the puck. It was so cool to help raise awareness of this drive. Hockey is the goal, as they're saying. You can find, like I mentioned, Pittsburgh College Hockey Foundation has all the relevant links online for how to donate to try to get these teams back on the ice and bring college hockey back to Pittsburgh, where it was thriving, I guess, except in a business sense for RMU. And I got a sense when I worked there in their PR department that they never really all the way committed to it. So sometimes it takes a near-death experience, or in fact, a literal death experience, to rally a community around a team, or teams in this case. And so I was just so happy to see that enthusiasm, which a lot of times when I was working in PR, it was hard to drum it up out of the Pittsburgh audience because there's so much going on, including the Penguins doing so well. That can be a gift and a curse because it puts hockey in people's minds, but it also leads them to believe that the Penguins are the only hockey worth watching. So, and the Penguins have been contending all 15 years since the RMU teams came into existence. So it's an interesting dichotomy. Like I said, the Pens are doing quite a bit, including letting RMU basically run their practice facility for a day in order to do this silent auction, which continues online, and also to sell out the Penguins practice facility for this celebrity face-off, which RMU won 12-11, by the way. So if you hadn't heard about the cause, just wanted to bring that to your attention. And it's a positive off-ice story in hockey right now, in a time when we could use it, because it seems like people are energized, and guys like Ryan Malone are really stepping up and doing all they can to bring awareness to this cause. And in fact, over $300,000 of anonymous donations were made to the Hockey is the Goal effort, endeavor, whatever you want to call it, since the celebrity face-off this past Sunday. So believe me, it wasn't because I was out there. It was because of all the efforts of the folks with the RMU program and the people who care about hockey and grassroots hockey, not just the Penguins in the area. So let's keep it going. Let's get over 1 million. And I'm going to do my part to continue to trumpet the message out there. Walt Flanagan lets me know that the Penguins claim that Jared Scaldi was let go because of COVID, yet the Penguins were the only team in all of pro sports to get a PPP loan when the pandemic was at its economy-wrecking height. So all important to keep in mind. I have a feeling the Scaldi has made out pretty well in this settlement, and I have a feeling that the Penguins, I know the Penguins didn't want this to drag out any longer into court, whether that be because of a lot of the negative publicity that's been out there on NHL teams due to the Chicago situation, or just the fact that this case on its own merits seemed to be pretty bad. And it seemed like that they were trying to make this all go away a little too easily and a little too quickly. So bravo to the Scaldis for bringing it to their attention, especially Aaron. It's got to be so dehumanizing to put yourself out there and say, yes, I was sexually assaulted, and nothing came of it, basically. Or at least in this case, nothing benefiting the Scaldis came out of it. So I hope that whatever the settlement is, however they came to an agreement, that it brings them some form of peace. And it seemed like Erin Scaldi was going to try to use this energy that she has surrounding this whole situation to stand up for victims everywhere. So there's some positive energy going there. You have to look really hard. You have to squint really hard to see some of the light amongst all this dark off the ice in the hockey world lately. But some light is out there for sure. Thanks, Walt, for chiming in on the chat here. We have 5 folks watching now, about a half an hour into the program. And that's about all I got for you, actually. It was a great game tonight. It was good early season NHL hockey, I would say. And I'm glad that there are 2 teams in the Penguins and the Panthers willing to trade chances sometimes. And as Phil Bork put on the radio broadcast tonight, sometimes as a head coach, you just have to put your hands behind your back and say, all right, I just hope we outscore them tonight. I'm not saying that's what Todd Reirden did, but in this case, it worked out for the Pens. And it's an entertainment product first and foremost, right? And I think if you watch that game at all, if you watched even a 5-minute snippet of it, you were entertained by it. And of course, as seemingly always lately, it came down to more than 60 minutes to decide it. Okay, Pens next in action. I mentioned this weekend 2 road games at Ottawa, Saturday at 7, at Washington, Sunday at 7. You can watch those on AT&T Sportsnet as well as ESPN Plus. If you're like me and you're out of market, I'm watching more hockey than I ever did in my life because of ESPN Plus. So really happy with the media rights deal as well. Okay, until next time, this is Matt Gajtka. You see my name right down there at the bottom of the screen. That's as basic as it gets when it comes to social media handles. It's just my name, Matt Gajtka. I know my last name's a little bit difficult to spell, but Gajtka. I'm right there on Twitter at Matt Gajtka. Same deal on Facebook, Matt Gajtka Media. And I'm on YouTube too, but I do most of my work here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Thanks to Mike and Alan and Joe and all the folks there, and Dan for having me on the platform once again. Talk to you next time. Pens win 3-2 in a shootout over the Panthers.